My son Ryan was diagnosed with autism when he was 22 months old, and we began looking for ABA intervention for him immediately thereafter. He started his ABA program at about 2 years and 3 months. The doctors who diagnosed my son with autism recommended that he have intensive ABA therapy. He was diagnosed at 3 different medical institutions near Washington, D.C., and one was a neurologist, one was a developmental pediatrician, but they were all medical doctors who recommended ABA. ABA therapy can be expensive if it has to be delivered intensively. My son was very severely impacted with autism, and so the doctors recommended that he be in a 40-hour per week treatment program, which of course was very tiring for the family. The therapy was delivered in our home, so it was quite an intrusion for our family, but it was an intrusion that we very much welcomed because we could see enormous progress from our son. It was also financially difficult for us. In American dollars, his therapy program worked out to be about $70,000 per year, and at the time we did not have assistance from our health insurance. After my son had been in an ABA program for a couple of years, I started meeting with various other families in autism support groups, and it kept me awake at night thinking about how unfair it was that my husband and I were able to provide ABA for our son because we were both well educated and had good jobs as lawyers. But your average family in America absolutely could not provide treatment for their children who were diagnosed with autism, notwithstanding that they were paying for health insurance, that the doctors had recommended this course of treatment for their children, and that just seemed very unfair to me, unfair for the family, and depriving a child of the opportunity to achieve maximum outcomes. When I tried to pass the legislation to require health insurance in America to cover treatments for autism, there was significant opposition. I thought it was a common sense idea. Not everyone agreed with me. In particular, the health insurance industry opposed this idea, presumably on the basis that it cost too much money that they didn't want to spend. Sometimes they would argue that the treatment was experimental, but in my research, I found that very much not to be true. There were decades of published studies that supported the use of ABA for individuals with autism. So I countered with, first of all, the literature, but secondly, a cost-benefit analysis, because it was quite clear that while there is an investment on the front end to ensure that children with autism receive appropriate ABA intervention by well-trained, board-certified therapists, the return on that investment was enormous. Harvard University put out a study in 2006 showing that for each child with autism who does not make maximum improvement, each child costs society 3.2 million American dollars over the course of their lifetime, both in direct expenditures from the state as well as lost productivity of the family, of the child himself. So from a cost benefit perspective, it was simply the right thing to do, and added on top of this, it was certainly the right thing to do for these children. There's a seminal study on the use of ABA for children with autism that was out of the University of California at Los Angeles in 1987. We call it the Lovaas study after Dr. Lovaas, who pioneered some of this work. And in this study, A group of toddlers with autism were assembled, divided into two groups. One group received the ABA treatment for a period of several years. The other group received some intervention that was available in the community, just whatever happened to be in that community at that time. In the group that received ABA, 47% of the children achieved normal IQ by the end of the study period. In the control group, only 2% of the children achieved normal IQ. So there's no question that it works. The role of parents is very important, not only in the ABA intervention itself, but also in persuading policymakers to fund ABA intervention. On the latter point, it really, in the United States, has been the drive of parents that has convinced 43 separate state governments to require funding for ABA. On the clinical side, parents also must be engaged in ABA programming for their children. They're not substitutes for the trained professionals, but a child who is engaged in ABA intervention needs to have consistency from the time he is working with his trained professionals to the home setting and the evenings and the weekends. So parents must be trained and engaged in the therapy as well. The United States Centers for Disease Control has engaged in prevalence tracking over the last several years, and we now know that the prevalence rate of autism is 1 in 68 children are being diagnosed. That is a dramatic increase over the last several decades. Just 10 years ago, I remember when it was 1 in 150 and 1 in 166, and many years ago it was thought to be 1 in thousands. So there is a dramatic escalation in the prevalence rate. We don't know to what that is attributable, but we do know that it has created a public health crisis. I think Czech politicians need to respond to this as urgently as possible. In the life of a child with autism, every day is considered a critical period of time because these children need to not only make progress, they need to make it at an exponentially faster rate than their peers so that they can catch up. We now know that it's possible for children with autism to learn, to acquire skills for daily living. They don't have to be relegated to institutions or housed away in special schools. You just have to invest the resources to have trained personnel throughout the country to intervene for these children, and it is urgent. I just want to add that I applaud the Czech Parliament for the attention they've given this issue. Just in my brief time here this week, we've had some very positive meetings, some ministry meetings, and it's clear to me that they have acknowledged the problem that autism is in the Czech Republic, or they're beginning that process, and so I applaud them for their efforts.